Good evening and happy Thursday to everybody. Welcome to Time to Suck It Up webinar. Hope you all had a terrific day. We have a lot of objectives here and we're going to discover how to keep a healthy vacuum system. Since you already have those objectives, I really don't want to go through them because a healthy suction line is valuable in any dental practice. Patients assume that behind-the-scene maintenance is being completed. They trust that we maintain and keep our high standards. Are we portraying the high standards with our daily, weekly, monthly maintenance for all equipment? Please have ready, this was on, we hope to have gotten this to you early, the name of your current vacuum cleaning solution product, your SDS sheet, the container of the product solution for the directions, and the type of vacuum system that you currently are using today at your practice. And is it wet or is it dry? I want to thank Air Techniques and Viva Learning for supporting this webinar. They are fantastic. They give us a lot of terrific information. So we are discussing vacuum lines today, and according to this cartoon, this poor patient is dehydrated. In Arizona, it does get hot. It is a dry heat, as everybody knows, but in the dental office, our equipment must be maintained in order to provide the quality care for each and every patient. So we're going to jump right into a poll. Let's see what your routine is in your practice facility. It all depends on what product you are using. So we're going to go to the poll. We're going to conduct the poll. And I'm going to give you about 20 seconds if you would answer to what you do in your office. And don't be shy. We don't have names on here at all. Just do what your gut tells you. Oh, I like these numbers. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, so get your numbers in there. And we'll go ahead and show you the poll. And let's see, well, almost 59% do it daily. So you clean your maintenance of your evacuation lines on a daily basis. That's great, as long as that is what your manufacturer's directions is telling you. So we're going to go ahead and go back to the webinar. And as you see, we have a lot of chairs, a lot in the operatories. We need to maintain all of those. So there needs to be a standard operating procedures. If you don't have a schedule, your equipment is at risk for low to no maintenance, which at some point you could be crashing at the worst possible time. Depending on what product you're using, depends on when you should clean your evacuation system. Think about all the bloody prophies that are done or extractions, the blood, the prophy paste, the ropey saliva. Okay, I know, it's sick. Come on. All of you are listening. You know what I mean. There's a lot of stuff going down those tubes. Okay, I'm going in. Do you ever feel that before you change the evacuation system filter that you must get into a hazmat suit? You're going in. The main trap found under the lab sink, now that's different than the evacuation system, but that's also not a real fun trap to be changing. So it's usually gross. But when you're going in to change your trap, depends on how often you're changing it, you might need a suit like this. So really, what do you think this will suck up? Not too much in my opinion. Have you ever had a vacuum system back up into the patient's mouth? I have. It's not a pretty picture. Thank goodness I wear a mask, because for your protection, the faces that I make will give away my shocking emotion. But it is the saliva backing up into the mouth that really was sad. And it was because our evacuation system was old and was no longer working properly. So this is a bleaching procedure. What would happen to this patient's gums should the vacuum system not suck up the bleaching product off their teeth. Could affect the gum line with a chemical burn. What about the blocking agent? Now think about it. That could adhere to the inside of the evacuation lines, causing a clogged system. We are all aware of the arteries within our body. Doesn't that look like an artery? And how they get clogged up with biofilm from foods that we eat or should not be eating, and putting our bodies at risk. Well, we are human and we deserve a little delicacies, especially now that it's Halloween. But our arteries also get clogged, and the hoses cannot be replaced in the body, but the hoses of the evacuation system can be replaced. And so we need to make sure that we're keeping them clean on a daily basis according to your manufacturer's directions. Now, how clean are the valves? Now, this is the valve that goes on the end of the evacuation line that you now put your saliva ejector in. These valves actually should be sterilized like all other treatment equipment and instruments. There are new disposable valves to replace the sterilization process, but to prevent wear and tear on these metal valves. But to break down these valves takes at least 5 to 8 minutes, then sterilize them, and now you have to put them back together. So it might be advantageous to look into the disposable valves. They'd be more time efficient. But you see how grody they get, and sometimes we just wipe them off and we really don't look at them in detail because we're in a hurry. Time is money, and in dentistry, we're always in a hurry. All the bacteria and biofilm within the hoses is pretty gross. I've never had the opportunity to dissect the lines of evacuation system yet. But if anyone does have that urge to do this, I would love some photos. The biofilm hardens within the skinny lines, and we don't really know how blocked they can be. Changing the hoses might be a good idea. There's no rule on the time, and it's unknown when the clogged lines can make their evacuation system work harder, and it makes it wear out faster. Chemicals can cause chemical burns. Utility gloves can protect or prevent this. Clinical gloves are not recommended to be used with chemicals. Clinical gloves are clinical. They have microscopic holes in them. The reason we wash before and after we glove. Keep yourself safe. Use the utility gloves to clean and work with chemicals, not the gloves from the grocery store. You can't buy these utility gloves at Walmart or at the grocery store. They have to be ones that are sterilizable. And there are some in dental catalogs. Our eyes are the only pair we'll ever have, and we need to protect them. There's a reason for wearing protective eyewear. Everyone should watch the video Jen's Vision, Blinded by a Dentist, to realize that a patient should have to wear protective eyewear, especially during all treatment, even if you are doing the bleaching. Without protective equipment on your patient, you are risking their eyesight. Most patients prefer sunglasses because of the overhead light. If you watch the video, it's a YouTube video, and it's called Jen's Vision, Blinded by a Dentist. It's worth a few minutes to watch it. Clinical protective eyewear. So we have both. We have patient eyewear and we have clinical eyewear. Chemicals can splash. We only have one set of eyes. We need to see everything that we're doing, and now that we're all wearing loupes, most of the loupes have side shields. But those that don't wear loupes, make sure you're putting your side shields on. Keep your eyes protected. OSHA requires that you, the clinician, and the patient both wear protective eyewear during treatment. And don't forget, side shields are a must. Now this office has it right. This patient's watching a movie during treatment. But without protective eyewear for the patients, accidents can happen. They prefer the sunglasses I just mentioned because of that overhead light. The calculus can fly through the air, the blood, and prophy paste. What's wrong with this picture? This patient is in a very dangerous situation. She doesn't know what she doesn't know. It's our responsibility to protect our patient's eyes. Ethics means do no harm. Masks are a must because of the fumes from chemicals, aerosols in any dental facility. Ultrasonic is a toxic dump. Don't lift that lid while it's running. There's a 6-foot radius of bacteria and toxic waste coming out and aerosolizing in the sterilization area. Wear a mask when working with chemicals. And, of course, chairside. OSHA's bloodborne pathogen standard requires that we wear long-sleeve lab coats or gowns that go to the leg calf. Wearing a lab coat, long or short, is to protect your arms from chemicals, aerosols, bacteria that land on your skin. What if that aerosol was a MRSA? Well, MRSA is a skin-eating disease. Some people are carriers. We need to protect ourselves as healthcare professionals. Yes, they get hot. I have a solution for that. I agree that the administrative staff can put on more clothes, where the clinical staff cannot take clothes off, per the bloodborne pathogen standard. When there is a heat war in the office, I suggest that the people in the front, the administrative staff, put on clothes or get a heater by their feet, because the clinical staff cannot go without long sleeves. I suggest you get out the bloodborne pathogen standard and review it at a staff meeting, and the contaminated lab jackets and any contaminated clothes must stay at the office. We discussed this in OSHA Boot Camp in depth, and you can get on OSHABootcamp.com for more information. Here's poll number 2. I'm going to start the poll. You're going to have 20 seconds. So what PPE must be worn when using a chemical? And this would be on your MSD sheet. I'm going to give you a little extra time because I kind of missed that. But if you go on your MSDS sheet of the chemical that you use to clean your evacuation lines, it will state what PPE, personal protective equipment, must be worn. And I think everybody's on board. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. You probably didn't even need to look at that MSDS. Anybody who knows me, I'm an infection control specialist, knows what I'm going to say anyway. Okay, I'm going to show you the results. We have 98.8% is all of the above, which would be mask and gloves, lab coat, and protective eyewear. Good job. You guys are on my page. Okay, so here's an MSDS or SDS sheets is what they're called now. And this particular SDS sheet will tell you what to wear. It's number 8, and it says exposure controls and personal protection. So all the new SDS sheets from the GHS, which is the Globally Harmonized System, which is new in OSHA, which you must be on target for in June of 2016 of all the changes. If you're unaware, I suggest you might want to get your team trained by me, which is OSHATrainingBootcamp.com. But the SDS sheets will tell you what PPE is necessary. So in this particular case, we need all of the above. So again, be sure you are reading the directions. That is why they're on the container, for your health and safety. Each new chemical should be discussed prior to your purchasing, and all SDSs are available online. It is worth checking before the product is purchased. What if the product had an ingredient that somebody was allergic to or was cancer causing? You might not want to bring that chemical into your office. So the safety check, you want to make sure you're looking for what happens if you get it in your eyes, if you ingest it, which most people don't want to drink this stuff. Is it toxic by inhalation? Do you have to move to fresh air? What is the risks for you, the person that is using this product? Whose job? Whose responsibility? Who's the OSHA coordinator? Who's the responsible person for ordering? These valuable personnel need to connect prior to ordering and once the product is in the building. All products should be discussed at a staff meeting on what the dangers are of all and any of the products you bring into your practice. Many of us are unaware of what is really in our facilities. Okay, back to traps. This is a clinical chairside trap. This is a typically how we clean them. We take them out, although this person does not have utility gloves on. It's weekly. We take out these traps and then check your manufacturer's directions. In some offices, they may need to change these traps more often. Hygiene traps are usually not full of amalgam or any metal, but usually the saliva runs through. If this is not cleaned regularly, major problems can happen, which means this unit may be out of commission. No patients, no production. Whether you're on commission or hourly, there is not a dental practice on earth that can have this happen. Equipment must be maintained, as your car, on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. At least weekly, you need gas. So I touched on this earlier. How old are your evacuation tubings? Are they clogged? Can they be putting stress on your evacuation equipment? You might need a new vacuum pump because of this. So how old is the practice? Ask yourself, how often do you need to replace this vacuum tubing? And how old are your water lines? It all falls into the same skinny little lines that can cause trouble. Heavy deposits form, as we saw in the previous slide. It's like cleaning a car. Love it when it's clean and healthy inside and out. So you need to protect your investment and maintain the full suction power daily with a cleaning solution that works for you. Here's another. How do you think this is going to suck or use or work on a daily basis? What does the manufacturer direction state? This is all part of infection prevention. Think of what would happen if the evacuation system blew out. Shut down. The health department would require you to shut it down. That's hazardous waste. Could be everywhere. No one can afford that. Any biofilm is unhealthy. And as you can see, this suction line will not be sucking for much longer. Evaluating a new cleaner? Well, what is the age of your equipment and your tubing? Maybe make a to-do list, because it depends on what type of pump you have. And is it dry or wet? And do you have an amalgam separator? The EPA is changing their rules for pH on amalgam separators. The pH must be between a more neutral zone of 6 to 8. These new rules are not out yet, but watch for a new update by the EPA in the summer of 2016. Neutral or close to neutral is what they're recommending. If your pH is too low, it'll damage, and if it's too high, it'll cause premature wear. So poll number 3. We're going to go ahead and start the poll right now. What characteristics should we look for in a new evacuation line cleaner? Of course, it'll depend on your system, with or without an amalgam separator or collection tank. Characteristics of your specific system will determine what type of line cleaner to be used. But you need to know several things, and we'll be discussing them. And I'm going to give you a few more seconds. All right, you guys ready? I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Got a few more last minute clickers. Okay. Let me show you the outcome here. So we have 60% saying B and C, which would be depends on the system being used, absolutely, and a neutral pH, which I just mentioned. Color of the container is not going to do anything for cleaning out your lines. And D, nobody put I have no clue. Okay, so that's all right. So we're going to go back to this next slide. Good job, you guys. And here's your answer. It's really going to depend on your system, whether you have an amalgam separator or a collection tank. The characteristics of your specific system determines the cleaner to be used. A wet ring pump or a dry vacuum system and the type of amalgam separator. Neutral pH and no chlorine or bleach. I know you guys, that biofilm bugs you. You do not want to put chlorine or bleach in there. You will destroy everything. So don't do it. I know it's an urge. Traps, individual unit traps. Sometimes it's not indicated daily. It depends on the amount of debris that collects. And again, it depends on what room you're in and what operatory you're using. What I like to do is place the trap in a Ziploc bag and then put it in the garbage or hazardous waste. So here's a lot of amalgam in this trap. So that would definitely go into biohazardous waste because that's an amalgam. There's mercury in there. We do not want mercury going into our landfills. So don't do it. Do not rinse chiricide traps containing amalgam over drains or sinks because of this mercury that I just mentioned. Mercury is very damaging to the environment. So that's exactly why we now have amalgam separators with our units. State by state, they're making it a law that the dental offices have to have an amalgam separator, so it just depends on what state you're in. So some of the products have oxidative properties, and they liberate the mercury ions into solution. Products that do not contain bleach or chlorine is something that you want to look for. You want to minimize the dissolution of amalgam, and only non-chlorine line cleaners is what you want to use, unless the trap has no chance of amalgam residue, strictly like a hygiene room, unless you're popping out amalgams by accident. So, as I said, no bleach. Sometimes we think it's very hygienic, but it's very corrosive and does a lot of damage. And then if it gets in your eye, it's very irritating to the respiratory system also. And it can take a lot of time to dechlorinize your systems. Amalgam separators remove the amalgam waste. They separate everything so it doesn't go into the public sewer system. And it also includes a standard of cleaner having a pH between 6 and 8. So your amalgam separator will also tell you what type of cleaner to use. And so that is part of that separator rule. But you just want to make sure that you mention that as proposed rule by EPA is not yet in effect, not until June of 2016. There have been delays with that final rule, and it's all about the pH from our government. And so more details will be following, as I said, in June of 2016. But you always see changes by the EPA. We learn more every day, and we learn what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. So stay tuned. So here's some evacuation system cleaners. Pure Vac, VacuSol, and Monarch Clean Stream. And then the signal words on the new SDS sheets, which everybody has to learn, we now have pictograms and signal words. So the signal words here are danger, danger, and a warning, where the warning means that it's not as harmful. And then we have hazard statements. And so you need to make sure you're looking at your hazard statement. And yes, any chemical can cause serious eye or skin irritation if you get it on there. Now, foam formation, you don't really want a product that has a lot of foam, as you see that if it collapses, that's okay, because the foam can wear out your system because it thinks it's something and it's really just air. So you don't, I kind of always like the foam. I put the product in and fill it up with water. Now I fill up the water and then put the product in to dilute it. So I don't get that foam. So you want to look for the pH concentration, and the Monarch system has been changed to 8.5 pH, and it has a fresh smell. We don't want to taste this. And it's, they're all good products, but they all do something different. So the Pure Vac dissolves and destroys a wide range of debris. It comes in a pump. It's non-foaming and biodegradable, and has also a fresh lemon fragrance, a smell. And then we have VacuSol Ultra, and it breaks down amalgam and fluoride gel. It's non-acidic, it's anti-corrosive, it has also a lemon smell, and reduces stress on the pump. And then we have Monarch Clean Stream, which is dispenser automatically aspirates the fine mist into the tubing walls. There's no foaming, no added stress to your vacuum pump. Dispenses the right amount of solution for each operatory so you're not wasting any product. That's something we don't want to do. And it has a concentration form that is diluted, and it'll fit all HVE and saliva ejector tubings. So all three products are good, but we want to make sure that we have the best one for your equipment and the right one for the pH, so you don't wear your equipment out sooner than later. So we have Monarch Clean Stream. There's no mess. It's easy to use, as I stated. The advantages are that there's no colored residue. All types of water quality can be used. There's anti-foaming properties, so you're not wearing out your equipment sooner than you think. And there's been studies on Clean Stream with other products, and it's been proven to work very, very well. So we have the active ingredients, and it cleans and deodorizes the vacuum lines for all wet and dry vacuum systems. As I said, the pH is 8.5, ideal for amalgam separators and recommended dilutions. And Clean Stream's dispenser is very easy to use. So we want to make sure that our dental practices are healthy. And so if the product is meant to be used as a cleaner, it may contain one or more of the following products. And one is a butoxanol or another glycol ether. This family of chemicals tends to absorb through the skin, and it can affect the worker's blood, liver, and kidneys. So there's certain chemicals in products that you want to look up, which is why I suggest you look at your MSDS or your SDS form before you purchase products, and check out what ingredients might not be healthy to have in your practice. Poll number 4. So only you can tell me what you have in your practice. So let me put the poll up. I'm going to start the poll. So what type evacuation system is being used in your practice currently? You may know, you may not know, you may want to take a lucky guess. Dry system don't use the quantity of water as much as a wet pump would. So I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. I should have the noise. Do, 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 do. Okay. Is everybody on board? Let me close the poll. I'm going to show you the results. And we have a 78% have a wet vacuum system and 22.4% have a dry. Awesome. We're going to go back and return to our slides. So with a dry vacuum system, of course you're not going to use the quantity of water as a wet pump. So this type of equipment can be more efficient if you want to reduce your utility bills. But wet vacuums use water, but depending on the quantity and required for the number of operatories that are being used in your facility, the water and electric bills can be a concern. They are now creating new vacuum systems that are wet or dry that are really economical for anybody with a wet system or any concern with water. So we have the Mojave, and that's a dry system. And this is kind of like a Going Green pump. It reduces your utility bills, for the clean and the wastewater. And so it's low maintenance, which allows us to do what we do best, meet the needs of our patients by providing quality oral health care. And going green is especially if you live in a state that is lacking water, such as California. Sorry, Californians. But it's been pretty harmful out there and a pretty big drought. And water is not as accessible as it has been in years past. So it just depends on what your needs are for your practice to determine what pump you might want to purchase in the future to look into that to save water. So how old is your pump? Should have had a poll on that. But if this was a washer or dryer at home, we probably would be replacing it if it looked like this. Although this truck is an antique, it doesn't have much gusto, and that the newer trucks have in today's world. The same goes for the evacuation pumps. They are more efficient, more effective, more time efficient with less maintenance. This is the 21st century, so technology is where it's at with the ability to handle all the patients scheduled for the day. A week without a hiccup in the evacuation system department. We don't want to lose any production because of our evacuation system. So here's some operating information. For the start of the day, you definitely want to turn on the water before turning on the power of the pumps. The vacuum level is preset, and its recommended system is to run continuously during the day. A vac star can be turned off if not being used for 15 minutes or longer, like lunchtime. And if you have two pumps, if one is being operated one at a time, it's important to alternate the pumps every other day so the pumps are worn and used evenly. The evacuation system trap maintenance, well, typically it's on a weekly basis. Again, I would check with your manufacturer of your unit. You want to unscrew the solid bowl counterclockwise and replace the entire bowl screen and gasket and screw it back onto the unit securely. And I'm going to go over that again because you can really have a mess if it's not screwed on securely. And I always place the plastic trap into a Ziploc bag so it's not within all the waste. A worn or missing gasket or a failure to tightly screw the bowl into the collector body will cause poor suction due to an air leak. So placing a note or a sticker in full view for the maintenance person who's going to be changing out this trap, you want to make sure that there's a note there saying to make sure that it's tightened correctly. Trust me, you don't want it to leak out. of any evacuation system, because nobody will get suction then. So here is the gasket and the screw bowl. So you want to tightly screw that on, and you want to change this filter weekly. You should have a maintenance book on all your equipment. I have created one if you're interested for all dental equipment, but you want to make sure that this trap securely seals every time you change it. You might want to put a little sticker up there so everybody can check that. Now, we go through a lot of saliva ejectors, but since we're discussing evacuation, the saliva ejectors are as important, if not as more important, because they enter the patient's mouth. We've trained our patients to close their mouths around the end of this tip. Don't do it. Research shows that the suck back is happening because of the negative pressure when closing the lips. This is a relatively new product. The little valve, that little blue valve you see, does not allow a suck back or anything from the previous patient to come forward. So it's safe for the patient to close their lips. Knowing what we know now, we should never allow our patients to close their lips around the suction tip. Would you yourself use an unvalved suction tip anymore? Not me. There's enough illness in this world. We don't know where it all comes from, but we know now that there is literature out there stating that when a patient puts their lips over the suction valve, they could be getting bacteria from the previous patient. So this is a safe flow. It stops contaminating fluid from going into the patient's mouth, which sounds good to me. The valves are available to use for your current saliva ejectors or purchase them with the valve. Enjoy the safety. So just question yourself. Tomorrow morning, if you're working, make sure your patient is not putting their lips around the suction valve, suction tip, unless it has a valve on it. Questions to ask yourself. Is the product compatible to your current system? Is it compatible with your delivery unit? Do you have an amalgam separator system? And is it compliant with the local wastewater policy? These are all questions you could be asking yourself when you purchase a new product. Now here are some hoses and some tubings. They're behind the scenes, so we would not normally see this. But look at how clogged they are. Now this is a clean unit, and this unit actually is a separator, and it separates the solids and the debris, and it prevents things from getting into the motor. So this is pretty new and pretty clean, hasn't been used much. This is pretty gross. So this is a dirty separator, and this does separate the solids, but then this is what's present when things are not cleaned properly. So how do we incorporate all this into our daily maintenance? Well, we need to set a goal. Since you've been through this webinar, we can set a goal. We need to create a protocol. Everything needs to be written. It's like a standard operating procedure. We need to include the manufacturer's directions. That makes your life easier long term, because we always have to go back to the manufacturer, what they've recommended for their equipment. So we write the protocol, and many times we keep it in our heads, but we really need to write it out, and then have somebody review it, and then we need to reach our goals on a daily basis, and then make it into our weekly and monthly routines for everybody, because we want to enjoy healthy evacuation lines and a healthy system. It all takes a team. It should not be one person's responsibility. I know I mentioned the OSHA coordinator, and the person, typically it could be a dental assistant that does the ordering of your products. But every team member needs to take charge of their operatory and be aware of what's being used in their facility. So it does take a team, and we all need to be on top of it. So what will you do tomorrow? Order a product with a neutral pH. Maybe check the age of your vacuum lines, and if you dissect them, I want the picture. And be proactive on keeping your evacuation system healthy. You can also call me for ocean infection control training for the entire team. Are you ready to jump in and replace the old with the new before you have a situation that causes cancellations of patients and no production? Like a car battery, it's 4 years old, winter is coming, replace it before you're stuck somewhere else late at night and can't get home. That's not a good situation. It would not be a good situation for patients to be canceled, no production, and not meeting your goals for the month. So I want to take this opportunity, if you have any questions, to please put them, to go ahead and ask. And or maybe I've stirred up some questions that you can contact me at info@OSHAtrainingbootcamp.com. If your team has not had their ocean infection control prevention training within your practice, you can let me know, and we can work on a date or something for your team to all be on the same page. I also have some references where I've gotten my information, and the American Dental Association. So I want to thank everybody. This webinar is coming to an end, but if you have any questions, I would definitely, let me go here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I want to thank you again for joining me. How do you suggest training for a new staff member or a temporary coming in for the day? Well, if you can email me, I do have a sheet. Every team member, temporary or a newbie, needs to be trained before the start of the day per OSHA guidelines. So the bloodborne pathogen standard. So instead of coming in 15 minutes before the start of day, they need to come in about 45 minutes. And I do have a sheet. And the sheet kind of walks you through. You should make or you can make a checklist. And the checklist would definitely help you when you get to the evacuation system on how to use it and what to do with it. But having that employee or temporary person come in early is really worth the time and money, because I know you'll have to pay them a little bit more to do that, but it is worth your equipment. So I hope that helped you. Everybody's saying thank you. Well, thank you for joining me. And oh, thank you, Elizabeth. She says, I'm always a pleasure to hear. And I kind of have a frog in my throat. I'm getting over that cough that's going around the nation. Let's see. Anybody else have any more questions? Patients shouldn't be closing their mouths around the saliva ejector when they use a valve. With the saliva ejector I showed you, safe flow, they can close their mouth around it because the valve will not allow the previous patient's saliva, blood, or bacteria from entering their mouths. But for years, and I've been in dentistry a long time, we have been doing this. And no, this is not a new practice, but we were not aware of all this information. So like I said earlier, as technology changes and we get more information and people are doing more tests, we're getting new information for the protection of ourselves and our patients. If it is a new practice, how can you prepare a new team and doctor for this important task? Well, it's team training, and everybody should have OSHA and infection control training once a year. OSHA is required in your practice once a year. Infection control you can get outside. I do give CEs when I come into a new practice or any practice and train you on your OSHA. And you know what's nice about that? Not only, I've done this for 17 years now. I go into practices and help them. I'm on your side. I want to make sure that your team is safe and your patients are safe and the doctor has less liability. So it is a training to do anything. It's just not for the evacuation system, all your equipment, how you use your hand hygiene, what hand hygiene or product you're using. You want to make sure that you're doing things correctly. We take a lot for granted, and it's just the nature of being human, and we think we know a lot, but there is a lot of changes going on with all the technology in the world today. Do you have a copy of a checklist? If you email me, I will give you a copy. It's info@oshatrainingbootcamp.com. Jolene, thank you. Lots of food for thought. Oh, I always give you a lot of food. I just don't, it's just not good. Just can't. Sometimes it's hard digesting all of this. But it can be done. You just take a little bit at a time. No, patients should not be closing their mouth on any saliva ejector. And anybody else have any questions? What is the advantage of a wet evacuation? Well, I think it depends on your location. The advantage of a wet evacuation, there's advantages of both wet and dry. I would talk to your representative in your area because a wet evacuation system will use more water and flush things quicker, and I think it depends on how many operatories you have. So if you want to go green, you might want to check into your representative in your area or call somebody from Air Techniques, and they have reps that'll come out and recommend things to you. And it's going to depend on how big your practice is and how many ops you have to what's the more advantageous to you. And how expensive is a safe flow? I don't think it's expensive at all, because if you have a patient that comes back who has something and they follow through and they can trace everything back to a dental practice, there's nothing, to me it's priceless because your patients will be safe. So remember, do no harm, and we now are aware of it. So what if you use sodium chloride for endo treatment to disinfect the tooth that's being treated? Well, that's a good question. And the sodium chloride in the endo treatment is not very, what's the word I want? You're not using it, enough of it. So it's not like you're putting a quart of bleach down your evacuation system. It's diluted. So that's a good question, and I will find that out. But if you want to email me, I will get an answer for you. But sodium chloride as a solution to clean your evacuation system is not recommended at all. We have too many metal parts that'll corrode. And I would also check to see if anything in your evacuation line is corroding in your system. And maybe that would put you into a different product. And I know sodium chloride is used for just about every endodontist. But I also heard that I was just at an endo office doing ocean infection control, and I believe they're using a different product now. Anything else? I know lots of offices in New York that don't dispose of amalgam the right way. Should they be reported? Well, hey, if you're living in New York and they're putting mercury or amalgam into the sewer system, yeah, I would think that I would want to do that, because you can do that through OSHA and not give your name anonymously, not to be a tattletale, but you want to protect the community and the environment. So I think that would be a good thing. I think that would be honorable. Let's see, anybody else have any other questions? I'm happy to Thank you all for joining me. That was great. Thank you, Stephen. And patients, no, should not be closing their mouth over a saliva ejector unless it has a valve on it. And you can email me for the checklist for the temporary assistant, hygienist, or personnel. Thank you, Yvonne. You're a better choice than the State Board of Dentistry coming in to shut down the practice. You're absolutely right, and most of you might have known about the Oklahoma dentist who was shut down. He is now being sued. I believe there are 10 or 12 patients that have now got HIV or hepatitis. Can't remember all the numbers, because he did not do his infection control correctly. And that's not okay. We all know what we need to do. We just need to do it. So when I come into your practice, I help you. I'm on your side. I don't come in and change everything. What I do is I come in and show you what needs to be done and how we can make it work for you. If we need to change anything, I kind of call it fine-tuning. We all need to be fine-tuned once in a while. It's like cleaning out the closet. You know, you got to do it every now and again. Safe flows are not reusable. Saliva ejectors are single use only. Do not put them in a cold disinfectant. Cold disinfectants are out also. And no, the valves cannot be sterilized. They're plastic. They are disposable. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. They should not be used twice. It's like gloves, single use only. Somebody had said it's not sodium chloride, it's hydrogen peroxide that people are using for the root canals. Thanks, James. But I do know, I was a dental assistant once in my earlier years, and we use sodium hypochlorite to rinse out root canals. But yes, many offices are using hydrogen peroxide. And just to tell a short little story, I still have a few minutes. An office I worked at many years ago did not use protective eye equipment on their patient, and the syringe for the sodium hypochlorite exploded when the doctor was flushing out the canal and went all over her eyes, her blouse. They had to go to the emergency room, and she was talking of a lawsuit. It's not worth it. You can go to the dollar store and get sunglasses. You can get them for the kids. Also should be wearing protective eyewear. You can get those at Oriental Trading. I mean, there's so many ways you can get easy access to protective eyewear. Viva Learning does offer CE credit, Elizabeth. You get 1 CE for this hour. And my email address again would be info, I-N-F-O, at OSHATrainingBootcamp.com. Thank you for all the information. I hope I'm answering all your questions. Wraparound glasses, sure, if that works. Do not use the patient's eyewear, though. If they come in with their own glasses, I had an incident with that somebody accused me, a patient accused me of scratching his glasses. Well, I'll be honest with you, you couldn't even see through those glasses before he came into my room. So, you know, you really just exchange glasses. Just tell them, I would rather have you wear my glasses and I'll set yours to the side. Then you clean the protective eyewear with your disinfectant wipes, and I always do it twice. You have to clean twice, once to clean and once to disinfect. And then I wipe it, and then I let it sit, and then I go ahead and rinse it and dry it with soap or with water.